Hi, y'all. It's Bridget Cutshaw with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Dr. Gala Gorman. She's an acupuncturist, a naturopath, and author of multiple books. Can you say hi, Dr. Gala?
Hey, nice to chat with you guys today.
Yes. Should I say Dr. Gala or just call you Gala, right?
You can just call it's actually Gala, and you
Gala,
can just say
sorry.
Dr. Gala or hey you.
Sorry. I see the word
If
Gala. I'm
you
thinking
can't
like
remember, no worries.
that's okay. That's okay. People misspell my name or mispronounce my name a lot too. I'm so glad that we connected, and I love what you're doing now. You're basically helping women who are older. And to start off the conversation, I wanted to find out, what you did and what got you into being an acupuncturist and a naturopath. I know you were in the business background before. Can
Yeah.
you give a little detail on that?
So I started working in an accounting firm when I just a few days after I turned 16 years old. And that's a long story, more than I'm going to share here today. But one thing led to another. The next thing you know, I am a licensed accountant, a CPA, and ended up running an accounting firm with a partner for quite a few years. And I like to say I was the earliest victim of midlife crisis that I know, because I think I started so early that by my mid 30s, I was like just totally fried and needed something else. But I shared with you before we started today that I consulted to physicians, to medical practices. I had a handful of clients that practiced alternative, like chiropractors and that sort of thing, but I had a lot of specialty medical practices that I consulted to. And so I got to see the, sort of like behind the curtain, the guy pulling the levers, think Wizard of Oz, right?
Right.
And so I really got to see, like, here's how it's done by people who practice this kind of medicine, and here's how it's done by people who practice this kind of medicine, natural alternative medicine. And I wanted more of that. So I started, got kind of sucked into that. And I was already interested in alternative and holistic sort of things, which is odd for a CPA, accountant type person. Anyway, long story short, I ended up selling my accounting firm, just really needed something different. And that's been a lot of years ago now. And ended up becoming an acupuncturist, because after poking around at a lot of different philosophies, I found that the common denominator was these energy channels in the body that the Chinese discovered thousands of years ago. And different methods will refer to it differently. Even acupuncturists, many acupuncturists try to use a more like Western friendly languaging to describe it nowadays, because it's just it's a little odd, right? But essentially, our body is a rechargeable battery, and all of these channels in the body, you can think of them kind of like the electrical wires that go down the road. And they're all, every time it hits a pole, it's kind of got a booster so that the signal keeps going. So we have all these points in the body that basically boost the signal and keep the signal going. And then your entire body, all the systems are all interrelated and interconnected, which really ties in with the overall philosophy that is holistic medicine, right? Like, you really can't deal with one system without affecting all the systems.
That's true. Everything is connected, and you don't know. It's like a domino effect.
Mm-hmm.
It could, right?
Yeah.
And if your wiring is off, it's gonna fry something.
Yeah.
It could. I shouldn't say will, but it could. It could hold you back. And I've never had acupuncture before, but I have a chiropractor I've seen for many, many, many years, and it has helped me for my health issues in the past. And now I've seen like cancer doctors or oncologists, excuse me, who are offering or recommending acupuncture to help with the healing process.
So, acupuncture essentially stimulates the body's energy production. Okay. In my clinic, I don't treat a lot of people here in my clinic. I treat mostly people virtually. But if somebody's here in my clinic, I use we call it electrical stimulation on the needles, and that basically boosts the energy available in the body, and it takes energy to affect healing. And so chemotherapy and even the radiation, even if you've gone through a surgery, that's incredibly draining on the energy system of the body. And it can be hard for your body to overcome that. And so with something like chemotherapy, they are building on one treatment after another, and your body becomes increasingly toxic as they're trying to kill off all these errant cells, essentially. And so what the acupuncture or any sort of alternative treatment that's designed to help your body, to support your body in detoxing, it basically just helps your body purge the toxicity. And then acupuncture in particular, or any sort of boost to your energy production, is going to support the healing process and also just give you enough energy to be able to manage it all. I was just working on my weekly newsletter this morning, and I always like to sit and think about it when I'm in meditation, because I think, like, what do I really want people to know this week? You know, I send my newsletter out on Sunday, and sometimes I just kind of start free handing it, because that is how it flows for me. I'm a handwritten person. I still have handwritten notes everywhere and trying to like wrestle that to the ground. But I was pointing out that when symptoms appear, those symptoms appear because your body's energy has become so low that it can't handle whatever it is it's trying to manage. And so the way we're taught to deal with it is to reach for some symptom suppressor, right? Pain reliever of some sort. And that comes in all shapes and sizes. But when we reach for a pain reliever to silence a symptom, I just really encourage people to remember that there's something going on that created that symptom, and it's been going on for a while because your body was handling it up until now, right? You didn't even realize it was going on because your body says, like, I got this, right? But by the time the symptom shows up, your body's like, I can't handle it anymore, you know, like I'm overwhelmed. And so people who are going through some sort of extreme treatment, like cancer treatment, for example, you know, that's just, the treatment is designed to basically strip your body down to nothing and rebuild, right? And so, you know, one of the things that I talk to people about, if they feel like that's the decision they need to make because they're faced with some health crisis like that, I point out that the treatment is not the cure. The treatment is just the beginning. The treatment is just to buy you some time so that you can get your act together, figure out what created the dis-ease that escalated to disease in the first place. And then as soon as the treatment's done, while the treatment's going on, you can do things to kind of mitigate the damage. But as soon as the treatment's done, now your work's really started, you know, because now you have to go back and repair all the damage that's happened from the treatment, but then also go all the way back to before the disease
Right. What caused it?
escalated.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a different way of looking at it. Most people just have not been counseled in that way. They don't think about it in that way because our medical system isn't designed to address things that way. And so um, for me, that's my biggest message to people. That is the hardest thing to hear, like stop suppressing symptoms. And people are like, what do you mean stop suppressing
As,
symptoms?
as
Like
you
my allergies are flaring up.
right.
I get heartburn when I eat. I can't sleep. And I say every single one of those can be traced back to toxicity of some sort.
It has a lot to do with your habits as well, and it's hard to change your habits sometimes. And as you were talking and mentioning all this stuff, I've seen a lot as my age. I know you got women. I don't have the issue, but I'm in my late 50s. There's other women who are getting diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And what I'm saying, that's just kind of a blanket statement. And to me, they don't really know what's caused. And there's probably so many things. I'm not gonna you know, I just thought that would be interesting. That to me, fibromyalgia is like the pain that your nerve pain, isn't it? Kind of all over.
Yeah. So I will tell people that fibromyalgia is a non-diagnosis that you get whenever they have no clue what's going on.
Right,
They
right,
have to diagnose you with something
right,
or else insurance will not reimburse. So for me in my world, I don't worry about insurance reimbursement. I realize that makes it difficult for people that I work with, but when people end up with me, it's typically because they've tried everything,
right.
and if they have some kind of non-diagnosis like fibromyalgia, or I say even better, the doctors have said there's nothing wrong with you. All the tests look normal, and they know they don't feel normal
Right.
by any stretch of the imagination. I say, fantastic that you found me before you got some crazy diagnosis and they started treating you with some really aggressive treatment, because the best time to deal with it is before you get some crazy disease
Right before it gets bad. And I think long time ago, I had had some weird body aches. And long story short, this one doctor said he said he didn't have fibromyalgia, but he said, here's some pain medicine. But it turns out I kept asking questions, and it turns out I have a rare primary brain tumor. And it grew slowly because my body accommodated to it, but
Mhm.
I still listen. This isn't right. This isn't right. And I'm one of those, I'm a PETA pain in the ass. Sorry, but I have to ask a question because
Mhm.
we didn't know it's rare, and it's called some people say vestibular schwannoma and some people say acoustic neuroma, but mine is actually the vestibular nerve. But it could be from being exposed to radiation as a child. That's why the environment has a lot to do. It could be back in the day when I had my first mobile phone. There's a lot of radiation in those things,
Mhm.
and you just don't know. And that's kind of why I think don't just. I mean, doctors they do a lot of work and get where they're at, but at the same time, they don't know, and so they're going to give you. I mean, that's just from my
Well,
perspective.
the other thing too is they poo-poo a lot of things. So
Yeah.
radiation, for example, is one of those things that the medical community totally poo-poos. Um, they won't admit that it has ill effects. And I
Yes.
was thinking about this actually just last week because I just got back from a month in Europe. About a month ago now. I can't believe it's already been a month, but um when you take plane flights, there's just a massive amount of energy that it takes to get that plane off the ground. And think about it, you're in this like metal tube where all that energy is like bouncing around
Right.
contained. And so for people that are really sensitive to it, like I am, we tend to kind of have that settle in our bodies. And so I had really been having trouble sleeping. And that's kind of one of my things, that if something's off, my sleep will be disturbed. And that you can only survive undisturbed sleep a few nights before it
Right.
starts like really creating problems. So I am always my last patient, right? So I'm like, okay, I got to scan myself and figure out what's going on here. And it turned out to be radiation, right? Radiation toxicity. And I put myself on a homeopathic remedy and a
Right.
protocol, and literally that night slept again. So the like resetting of your body's energy system can be all it takes to
To heal. Yep.
kind of get your body going in the right direction. If you've built up toxicity, it's going to take a while to pull that out. But the point that I'd like for people to hear is that if I started taking melatonin or worse, some prescription medication to sleep, right? If I would have gone to a medical doctor and said, I just can't sleep. It's like, I'm waking up every single night between, 2 and 4 o'clock. And most nights can't go back to sleep for 3 or 4 hours. They'd be like, oh, we've got a pill for that, and the next thing you know, I'm hooked on, sleep medication, right? And the radiation, the damage from the radiation that's bouncing around in my body is continuing to cause harm, right? So that's a awesome example. And like you said, they prescribe you pain medication when you have a brain tumor,
Correct. We
did
didn't,
you?
and it's rare, right? And
Yeah.
it's just really weird.
And did you have the tumor removed? Was it
No, I
operable?
I saw like 6 different specialists. They didn't know what to do. And it ended up, I talked to a neurosurgeon and I asked him, he monitors it. I said, if this is your wife, what would you do? He goes, I wouldn't do the surgery. I'm like, thank you. Because I ended up going with this thing called cyberknife. It is targeted, it shrunk it, it killed it. But it's so if I ever have to um have it like debulk it, is that the right word?
Mhm.
They couldn't remove it totally because then I would be paralyzed. It's just where the position of it is. And
Okay.
so that's
But they
why
stopped it from continuing to grow.
correct, because it was a medium size. It was 2.5 centimeters. And you had to do something. And I'm so glad
Yeah.
because it could be um, if I ended up having the surgery, there's a really high risk of paralysis.
Mhm.
And it put that's why all the doctors are like, oh, ended up going
Yeah.
to it wasn't cancer, but it was just something that grew from um like I said, radiation exposure. And I'm a military brat, so who knows? I was around
Ah,
military bases when I was
yeah.
little,
Yeah.
right? And or you just don't know. As you
One
like
of my
said,
really good friends, when I still worked at the accounting firm, so it's been a lot of years ago now. Um, remember the old brick cell phones? We
yes,
called them the brick,
yes,
So the cell phones completely changed our world theoretically for the better, right? But he had one of those old brick cell phones, and he was a stockbroker, and he had it just always like on next to his head. And then when they ended up getting the like wireless things, he always had like a wireless headset. And I warned him a number of times that he needed to do something to mitigate the radiation and the
right.
EMF that was essentially polluting his brain. And he ended up with a brain tumor and passed away,
Oh wow.
leaving his wife and a couple of little kids. He passed away like maybe in his late 40s or early 50s. And I mean, to me, that's just totally ridiculous. Like they're just we need to recognize the signs. Like I I don't know. I wasn't close enough to him where I kind of knew what symptoms he was suppressing, but I have no question that symptoms were being suppressed, just like you were having pain, right? And the doctor says, "Here, take this pain
Right.
medication. This
They
will
did
fix it."
he did x-rays on me. but nobody thought about looking at my brain until I kept asking, and it ended up I have a dent on my brainstem because it wasn't growing on the brainstem, right? But it's always my husband jokes that it's very sexy, but you have to like find the humor in it. But
Sure.
maybe even though I was exposed to radiation, I mean, I had one of those brick phones in the beginning. I mean, you just don't know.
Yeah.
But
Well, the other thing too that people will say is, so if it really is so toxic, why doesn't everybody who, use the brick
right,
phone have the same problems? And it's a fair question. And I know it's frustrating, but there is such a soup of combination that each one of us is dealing with. We
right.
have genetics, we have our environment, we have like how we came into the world,
That's true.
like our gestational period. And then if we came into the world and maybe we were early or late, or we had something that they had to medicate early on that affected our immune system. Like there's just so many different things that
Right.
could have happened very early on that we have
Well, that's
zero control over, right? And then all the years we've lived, we've
you just
been
don't know.
exposed to things that the other person wasn't. And you just have no way of knowing like why your particular combination is extra sensitive when somebody else is not.
And it does make sense when you're a child. If you are exposed, you're more susceptible. My mother never had any issues. You know what I'm saying? My
Yeah.
father died a long time ago from Agent Orange exposure. He was in Vietnam. You just don't know what I was around, and
Yeah.
and I was young, and as an
Yeah.
adult, it's you just don't know. And we
Yeah.
have
So
so
this
many.
is an interesting, there's an MD that can't think of what his last name is. His first name is Tom. I haven't had a chance to read his book yet, but I
Okay.
heard him speak at a conference that I was at, and my mind was blown, right? But he said that some of these diseases that are these odd kind of things um, can be passed through to the offspring through like bodily fluids, right?
Right.
So like you are the product of your dad and your mom,
Uh-huh.
right? But where your mom was exposed to the toxicity that your dad was dealing with as an adult with an already established immune system and all of that, you were exposed to Agent Orange
Somehow.
toxicity
Right.
from the time you were a egg,
Right. Right.
And so do you think that could have potentially kind of made you more susceptible to
Right.
things that would maybe somebody else would not struggle with as much,
And I
So
think it's more than just the agent. I'm sure all the military people are
oh
exposed to a
sure,
lot of
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. No,
Exposed to
that's
a
just
lot.
an example.
Yeah.
I love to like have real examples that seem so odd, right? Because I'm not saying that you are going to meet your dad's fate. You are aware of it and you're doing things to mitigate it, right? And fortunately, I encourage people in my book to become their own PCP, and that's primary care person. And
Yeah.
I tell them, don't let the doctor off the hook. Keep asking questions. And people say, well, what if my doctor won't cooperate? I'm like, get another doctor.
Correct.
That's absolutely keep going next, And I know they're hard to find sometimes now. In the area I live in Hilton Head, I mean, it's hard. People say they can't find a primary care practitioner, right? And so that makes it even more important for you to become your own PCP and make sure that you've really kind of got your ducks in a row and you have things figured out, or at least you know the questions you need to
Right.
ask so that it's an efficient meeting for the doctor when you finally do get in to see
And
them.
it
But
was a wild thing, and they call me a zebra among horses. You ever heard of that term before?
I
Because I do
have, yeah,
everything right and had these weird things happen to me, but as it's more of environmental, and we don't know if DNA is involved, but
yeah,
at least I listened and asked questions, and I like what you said. I would only, if a doctor would just blow me off, I wouldn't go back to see that doctor, just
Mhm.
because I think the medical field is so tough right now, and I just don't know. I'm not a medical doctor, but I do know from a patient perspective, you want to work with them, and I do know they're overwhelmed, I think, too, because they're getting pushed being pushed by a I can go off on
Yeah,
another.
so sometimes people interpret what I say as being really against the medical
Right, no,
profession.
right.
And that is not at all where I come from. And I do defend them to a degree. Sometimes they do get a little arrogant and aren't open to alternatives that if they poked at it themselves, especially with their scientific minds, they would be able to see that, like, they're already using treatment technology and other sorts of treatment methods that are based on the same sorts of things that we use in the alternative world. I mean, for example, in Chinese medicine, Oriental medicine, we use herbal medicine, right? That's like our first line of defense. And just about every pharmaceutical drug is based on
Those herbs.
herbs.
Yeah.
And then they have to chemically enhance it in order to get it patent, which then allows them to be able to charge a whole bunch of money for it.
Right.
So anyway, that's a kind of different rabbit hole that we won't go down today. But medical professionals have a, a lot of competing priorities. One is they aren't trained. And in fact, not only are they not trained, but they're discouraged from taking an alternative viewpoint with healthcare. And then they're disincented because insurance won't pay for anything
Right.
alternative, right? If you don't prescribe something that has a diagnosis and a code that can be billed for, nobody's going to pay for it, right? And then if you did something and something not great happens and you didn't follow all of those guidelines, you're going to end up getting sued, and then that's another, like,
Is that in our
issue to
culture,
deal
the
with.
United States or North America? I'm just curious.
I think, I've never had to get medical
Right.
care anywhere
I know you
else,
did. Right. I'm just curious if what you.
Yeah, but I think that this is another, like, huge issue that is a polarizing topic. Too many people in this country are handcuffed to a job they don't like, a spouse there that is not good for them, some other life tether, because they need health insurance and they couldn't get it any other way. And the easiest way to say this is that seniors, as you approach 65, my husband will be 65 in a year, and I've got a few more years before I get there. But literally, we don't use the regular standard medical care anyway, but you kind of have to have it. If you had an accident or something and you ended up in the hospital, you could be bankrupt in like 2 months, right?
Right.
So you've got to have some way to cover it if you have something happen that you end up, like, sucked into that system. And so people are counting down the days until they get on Medicare so that they have health insurance that is comprehensive, right? And then you have all this argument about why we shouldn't have universal health care, when actually we do already have universal health
Right.
care. We just don't have it until you hit 65.
Right.
And so I just I think whenever you start talking about the, like, medical system, you have to understand just that there's so many competing priorities, and and then legalities. And so so it's understandable that most medical doctors just try to stay in their lane. They don't want to get, outside of their scope of practice. They've built a system around, you go to see this one person for this one thing, and then they don't have time to like collaborate with each other, right? Which is what they really need to do,
Right.
right? You need to have a team of half a dozen people all in the same room discussing your case. And if they put all their heads together, they could probably figure it out, but that's never going to happen, right?
Right. It's
So
kind of a silo
yeah.
kind of. It's it. I also like the word integrative medicine.
Mhm.
It's kind of like combining your naturopath and with the traditional medicine. I think that's a good. That's kind of what my approach has been, because I knew I had to go that route with this new technology to kill that thing, and because it was not going to stop. And but it was a scary decision. But like I said, I found a neurosurgeon who didn't want to do surgery, but he's monitoring it for me, and that's why I trusted him.
Yeah.
And it's really good that what you're doing. We need to talk about this more. And one last question I have for you is, I know you work with older women. I should say older, excuse me, uh, seasoned women,
Mature.
more mature women. We're seasoned. So what?
Yes.
I guess you're drawn to that because of that. Is the season that you're in, maybe? Is that what it is? Or
Well, in part, but also I lost my sister and my mom
oh
to
well,
cancer.
okay,
And I both of them did things I tell my patients not to do regularly, right?
right,
And I got to see it firsthand with my mom, because I was there with her as she was going through it. It was shortly after I left the accounting firm, so it's been quite a few years from when she had her first cancer diagnosis. And and then my sister was, quite a few years after that, but my sister was 2 years younger than me.
oh wow,
And it's just um from my perspective, that's just unacceptable, and it's happening far too often now. When I like, if I run a promotion, like kind of a local promotion here for my clinic, which I do occasionally, I'll have a fresh stream of people come through. And a lot of times there'll be people that are looking for some alternative because they have come out of the medical system and they've had a really like bad experience,
right,
right? And some of the things I have seen are just like absolutely tear my heart out. But you know, you it's really hard. It's a big job, uphill climb to repair a lot of damage after that damage has gone on for too long. And if you've had really aggressive treatment, and a lot of times if that treatment maybe didn't solve the problem, then they keep going back and trying something else, going deeper, whatever, and it ends up being just a hot mess that is hard to clean up and maybe is not manageable ever,
right.
really.
It
And
doesn't learn.
um so I've just seen it. I've seen it with my own family. I've seen it with patients. And I am a genetic product of, my mom's bloodline. And so I know that I need to be extra careful, right? If there's just because you are genetically predisposed to something does not mean your body will express it. You still have to have, like, all the stars have to align before that genetic predisposition expresses. So patients come to me and they say, well, I got this because I had a 55% chance of getting this because I have this, this, and this. And I say, well, why weren't you in the 45% that didn't get it?
Right.
Like we want you to be in the 45% that doesn't express the genetic predisposition. Okay. Which is totally possible. For 4.5 in 100 didn't, right? Or 4.5 in 10 didn't, right? So it's totally possible, but you can't ignore the symptoms. You can't keep suppressing the symptoms and ignoring it and trying to kick the can down the road. You need to catch it when it's just dis-ease and not let it escalate to disease.
I like the background. I should say, I mean, you are motivated and inspired based on your experience, your personal experience. You saw the system, how it worked, and then you saw what happened to your mother and your sister. And it's really inspiring and motivating, especially I think women in general, we're more stressed for, we have a lot on our plates. We can't say no. We have our time saying no. That's what I've seen. And I'm guilty in the past,
Yeah.
but we all are. And I love
that's why the title of my book is What's Your Kryptonite? Manage the toxic stressors threatening your superwoman status.
I love that.
Because that's the way we see ourselves, right? We're superwoman. I can handle this, right? Just
Correct.
throw one more thing over the fence to me.
That's a good title of a book. What is your kryptonite? It's true. What we all have a weakness and we want to help. Yeah. I think women in general, we just want to help everybody. Doesn't matter if you're a family or not. And but I think you're a good example of pivoting where you needed to help other people. You knew you had a switch and you felt burnt out, when you were in your mid-30s, but you're doing the right thing and helping so many people. So where can people learn more about you?
My website is the easiest place to find me. That's drgala.com, and that's just drgala.com. And if you're into following people on social channels, at the bottom of the homepage of the website, I have all the little badges from the different social channels. So it's easy to find me just by clicking on any of those. And if you'd like to get my weekly newsletter, you can find a little form that you can fill out as you get scrolled to the bottom. That it makes it really easy. And hopefully I will hear from you in the future.
I like your short, simple website. Doesn't make it complicated at all. And I think that's a good point. Got to keep life simple. And when you can, where you can, not all the time. But thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation, and this is going to be very valuable to the audience.
I hope so. And just remember, you're your primary care person.
I love that.
You're the one who knows best what works for you.
That's true. That's perfect. Thank you again for your time.